Hi there, thanks for joining us. It's Simon Geere again with HR Talk from Alexander Lloyd. As you know, I help HR directors, CEOs and MDs in the southeast of the UK find the best HR talent. Now today I've arranged to speak with Catherine Hooper from G4S, an HR director that I've known, Catherine, a long time, since 2012, I think.
Right,
Did a bit of research. And I've known Catherine pre her job now, where she's been a candidate. I've also helped her as a client over the years. And we're really here today to talk about HR in 2020, really, the various plan structure that I've been using, sort of plan A, where we were, plan B, how we've dealt with COVID and the changes to business and society as a whole, and then plan C, what the future is. So we're hoping to share some ideas, some concepts, some methods for coping, how we've all dealt with this uncharted territory really, and hopefully move towards outcomes that suit us as individuals and businesses as a whole. So welcome, Catherine. Thank you for joining us.
thank you. Hi.
Hi there, you're right. Good to see you.
And you?
Because we don't see people anymore, do we? So it's nice to actually socialise.
Liking the longer hair?
Well, yeah, it's a haircut on Monday, I'll be honest. This is, it's long overdue, very long overdue, some would say, but thank you. Well, leaping straight in. So plan A, I guess if we throw ourselves back to January, what were you thinking about from an HR strategy point of view? Where were you organisationally? What were you up to?
Okay, so I probably have a different picture to other people in terms of at that time in January, my role was very much as part of a division of the business, which was being separated from the main part of our business, whether we were going to separate it from just separating out or from a sale perspective. My entire role was working on that separation. And we had been working on that for several months beforehand, and continued on that up until now.
Right. Okay. So you had a big job on anyway.
Yes. So and kind of halfway through that, we did decide to sell that part of the business, and so that was just when actually COVID was kind of starting to impact us in the UK, and so we were managing that sale process during the COVID situation, lockdown, etc. But at the same time, my boss left, and I was then asked to act up into the group role, and kind of take on a whole new role at the same time in the middle of a pandemic. So it's been interesting times for us.
Fantastic. So there was kind of an unexpected promotion, a sale, and the world going crazy effectively, and having to deal with all those issues. So how did you go about it? How did you survive?
So I guess from a sales perspective, that all kind of came to a head at the end of February when we announced the sale of the business. And we've really kind of managed as well as we could do throughout that process to ensure that we involved a kind of smooth transition from one company to the other company. It involved many different countries, so there's probably about 19 countries, and separate businesses within each of those businesses. Some of them were part of other businesses as well that we needed to separate out. So I think we were quite used to a virtual environment because the project was a global project. So we spent a lot of time on Zoom calls or Hangouts like this, really just trying to kind of manage that. So that was no different for us. I think the big difficulty came for us in terms of in order to do some of the practical steps in separating a business. We also had lockdown in many of the countries at the same time, which made it very difficult for us to perhaps address some of those challenges that we had. But over time, we've obviously managed to do that. I think so. From that perspective and that part of my role, I would say it was impacted, and we also were selling businesses while they were affected by the coronavirus, or they were in countries where coronavirus was present. And so we were at the same time trying to ensure that the safety of our staff in all of those countries, and making sure that we had safe practices in place, because the majority of our workers across the whole business would be classed as key workers and would continue to work throughout any lockdowns. And although we may have seen some reduction in services required, we still saw the majority of our staff continuing to work. So we obviously had to do a considerable amount of work to ensure that the risk assessments were done and that we were putting safe practices in place for our staff. So that was kind of on the side of the business that we're selling, but at the same time, obviously, I took on the wider role and looking at all of the businesses across the whole group, which is you know, a significant amount of staff in a significant amount of countries, all who had experienced coronavirus in a slightly different way at slightly different times. I think the really important thing that's come out of this for us, in terms of how we've dealt with it, has been a very unifying for our business. We're very large, and so therefore you tend to kind of manage the area of the business that you work within. Whereas what was really in particular the region that you work within, it was very important for us to actually ensure that we firstly learned from other people who might have been experiencing some of the challenges for us. So for example, in Asia, they were you know, they were obviously one of the first, and they had put in place all of the practices that they believed they required, and they'd learnt from how they've been doing it as well. And so it's important that as a group we worked closely together to learn from each other and to make sure that we kind of addressed best practice as best we could in a evolving situation across the different regions. And I would say that was something that was a real, if you can have any plus out of such an awful situation, then that's something that we've learned from that. It's been an extremely difficult time for us because of the fact that our staff are working out on the front line every day. For our office workers, we were very impressed actually with our IT system and our IT department. We managed to very quickly, in all of our countries, enable people who might be office based to work from home. And so in the main, office based people who weren't required to be in an office or in a branch were enabled to work from home, and that has actually been that was quite an easy process, surprisingly, to make that happen. We've just done a global survey with all of our head offices around the world who have been working from home, to kind of understand the experience, because I think I'm sure many other companies will have experienced the same thing in terms of once lockdown happens, it happens very quickly and the government advice comes and says, you know, tomorrow we're expecting people to work from home if they can. And so we had to enable it quickly. People had to go home and work quickly without I guess the kind of thorough process that you might normally go through. And we've had to kind of pick up on that, make sure that we've dealt with it in a safe way to enable people working from home. And actually, I think absolutely hats off to our teams. They've enabled us to do that.
Oh, that's brilliant. I mean, it's particularly with your organisation where I guess the majority of staff are key workers, so their business continues. It's very, the engagement piece is challenging, isn't it? Because there are anxieties, there are, as you say, support services get home. It sounds like you guys did a great job of that and getting people productive very quickly. And I mean, this feels like HR and IT's kind of moment, doesn't it? That they've got together and enabled businesses to operate really successfully with no notice, effectively. And we're hearing that again and again, which is brilliant. But what sort of steps have you taken to monitor those engagement levels? How's that been so far?
Yeah, so I think the survey that we did for our office workers was really useful for us to understand what the experience had been for people, not just from a kind of technical perspective in terms of the equipment that they had, but also very much covering the kind of engagement piece with our staff as well. And we were delighted actually that the scores we got were really very positive from our staff. And our managers have done a sterling job of really kind of adapting to a virtual environment. I think a lot of people would say that they have better engagement with their managers now than they might have done previously. They've made the effort to have these sorts of calls with their staff, and they've done interesting things. They've done quizzes. They've one of our teams, one of our global teams, decided that they would each member of the team would choose a song that was their favourite song, and they would have a risk playlist. So you had this diverse range of music from all these people around the world, and so they've done some really kind of different things that have helped to keep their staff engaged. We've had really positive feedback from new joiners as well, who've joined halfway through lockdown.
It's tough, isn't it?
Yeah, and they haven't physically been in an office. And so, you know, the managers have done a great job of making sure that they're continuously, you know, they've got a plan in place to ensure that they onboard them properly, even though it's virtually, that they connect them with the right people, that they feel engaged to our culture, our values. And so, you know, we've been pleasantly surprised by how that's happened as well. The stuff that we're doing now is really looking at how we improve upon that. So we think that a lot of our staff will remain working from home for a period of time. We don't see yet a window when people will go back full time into the office, and therefore things like staff engagement, things like learning and development, things about collaborating with your colleagues, it's all of those sorts of activities that we now need to really focus on. We're lucky that we've got a learning management system, which means, you know, a lot of our development is online, so we've been able to roll out things. We've had a regular beat of information going to our staff, a lot of stuff around mental health and well-being, because certainly, you know, and I know, kind of sitting on these calls all day, you're not standing up, you're probably not seeing anybody else. So, you know, we need to kind of make sure that we're kind of prompting people and helping them, giving them guidance on what would be helpful for them, particularly from a well-being perspective. And, you know, a lot of our staff, particularly those who are based in London, for example, who generally have maybe a 2 or 3 hour commute every day, they're utilising that time to do some exercise or spend some time with their kids or do something different. So, and we're really encouraging that. What we need to be sure of is that there's a delineation between work and home life, and that can sometimes be difficult when you're working from home. And so we're encouraging people to make sure that happens.
It's interesting you mentioned that. I mean, it's tough, and everyone's got a different version of it, because working like this does enable you to be quite disciplined with your structure. I find you can have, apart from the X factor things that happen to you, you can go management time, this time, that time. And as you know, I've been working from home for 3 months now, and I went into the office yesterday, which was novel, and just met up with some of the guys who we're working with. But we talk like this so often. We had nothing to say to each other because we'd spent an hour and a half on the phone the day before, you know. And I know everything. I know about your weekend. I know what we're doing this week. I know what the results are. And it was strange. We sort of said our virtual relationship is actually better than our physical one. Do you know what I mean? It's strange, but everyone's going about it in a different way. Some people are starting blisteringly early, getting a lot done, then doing some homeschooling. I mean, hats off to these, you know, everyone that's having to cope with, you know, education and work and everything else that we're all going through. I just, you know, you can only applaud, can't you? You know, I think one of the advantages of old age is we don't have to worry about that for me. But and other people, I think myself, I'm sticking to quite rigid office hours. You know, I'm sort of starting when I started. I'm still doing the exercise I did. I still take a break for lunch when I can. So it's just the surroundings that are different. But as you say, it's making sure people just don't work all the time, which I think is the risk, isn't it? Because the mental health and well-being piece is, it just seems to get, gather momentum each day, doesn't it, from a company and corporate initiative perspective.
Yeah, definitely. And there are people who, thrive on actual social interaction with people and, spending time physically with people. And so, and they work, they live at home on their own. Or, particularly a lot of our younger staff, the whole social interaction is really important to them at work. And so, whilst they've really respected the fact that they've been kept safe and have been able to work from home, and like part of that, there's still that piece that they're missing that we really need to think about whenever we think about anything for the future. We shouldn't expect that everybody wants to work from home full time. There are many people that wouldn't work for them, and we need to consider that, I think.
Oh, definitely, you're right. It's as you say, it's no one size fits all, does it? It's a tough one. So, I mean, going forward, you've obviously, as you say, you've had to cope with changes to the business, changes to your role, etc. I mean, are there any other key areas that you felt you changed direction on between this kind of March to June period, which is when a lot of people seem to go through? I mean, a lot of people have been talking about, the furlough piece, the change to headcount, but for organisations where the service was required, it's probably been a very different challenge.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we have had to face all of those things as well. Some of our businesses have been affected more significantly than others. But there are kind of projects that we were working on from an HR perspective that absolutely went on hold during this process, because actually, if you look at the involvement from an HR perspective in everything to do with the pandemic, we've all been heavily involved in making sure that we're obviously having the safe practices in place, but kind of dealing with everything that's happening around coronavirus and how the companies had to react to that. So I think for many organisations, it is almost like a pause button in terms of some of the kind of key projects that you've got that you want to move forward on. And I think D&I is something for us that we were kind of very much set to start a more strategic interaction on this year, that we had to kind of hold back on. But I think now that we've got to the stage where we're managing, I guess, the pandemic on a kind of daily basis, but it's something that we've been managing for a period of time, and we've learned from each other. It does now perhaps give us the ability to start to move forward with some of the things that we perhaps put on pause before. So things like, for example, from a D&I perspective, one of the things we're just about to introduce an inclusion council globally, to really look at some of our challenges. We have a very diverse workforce. It's a very large workforce and very diverse, but we know we still have opportunity to improve how we're doing things. And we believe that if we can involve a whole network of people from across our organisation globally, then we can start to make a difference in those sorts of areas. And that's something that we now feel we can start to move forward with.
That's great. And you've got to tackle that globally, haven't you? It's such a challenge. Is that something that you would do territory by territory, or just as one big corporate push? Or is that to be decided?
Yeah, no, we've made a very conscious decision that we will do it globally. And so we have representatives who are currently being signed up across all of the regions. And one of the things for us as an organisation is to make sure that we do things. We are one business, and we need to act like that, and we should have a global approach on things. And that's certainly one of our kind of key objectives for moving forward, is to make sure that we are thinking connectedly like that. And so from a diversity point of view, although of course we'll have differences in every region and probably in every country, we believe it's something that's important for us globally, and whilst we might nuance in different countries, I think the objective is the same.
Excellent. Biggest HR challenges for 2021? What do you think the industry will be? I mean, I think diversity and inclusion is a huge one. I think for many reasons. There's obviously a lot that's happened this year that have I mean, it was the top of the agenda anyway, but highlighted the need to look at how we deal with this on a corporate basis. Other things that you think are areas for that HR functions will be developing new policies, creating new initiatives next year?
Yeah, I mean, I think undoubtedly we won't be any different to any other organisation in terms of the environment that we've worked in for the last 3 or 4 months has fundamentally changed how we think about our work environment. I would say that as an organisation, we were probably quite traditional before in our approach to office-based work, and the majority of our kind of management administration type staff would all work in an office probably 5 days a week, and this experience has showed us really that is that actually what we need to be doing, and could we be doing something differently? Could we be more flexible and progressive in how we look at our work environment moving forward? I think we take on board all of the feedback that we get, and we understand that we're not going to move from a 100% office to a 100% home working environment, but there is absolutely something in between there for us, and I would expect that we'll be looking at a workplace of the future, which is much more about collaboration and kind of important meetings rather than kind of day-to-day work. And so there's a whole piece of work for us around that will move into next year, which will obviously need to think about staff engagement, staff development, but as a massive opportunity from a talent perspective for us as well. So we have, like most people, traditionally looked at people who are available in our area.
Yeah, geographical piece, isn't it? Yeah.
Absolutely, who could come to the office. Now kind of the boundaries can be widened hugely, and our talent pool will become much larger. And we need to think about how do we make that work? How would we make that work for us? Because I think that gives us the opportunity for a much more diverse workforce, and we're not stuck with a geographic location, as you say. But I think that will be really important for us next year, and for us as an organisation as well, as we evolve, and we're very much evolving from kind of manned security to the more technical side of that, and our manned security business will continue to be very, very important to us. But we'll also build our the technology side of our business, which actually means from a talent perspective, we also need to think about how do we attract, retain, develop a different type of skill set and person than we've had previously. So I think that will be one of our big challenges globally next year as well.
Definitely, it's such a strange. I mean, we're hearing some guys I've been talking to this week who've said they've hired people who are working out really, really well that they couldn't have hired. They're geographically too far from, they haven't yet met them, they haven't been to the office, it's all great. But I think there is this, how do we engage long term with those people? At the moment, in crisis, that's fine. People are happy to have work, happy to be employed and doing the job. But over time, it's finite, isn't it? And it's how we keep our arms around these people that we may not see particularly often. And one, ensure they're productive, two, ensure they're happy. And I haven't quite got my head around that yet, I have to be honest.
Yeah, I think I mean I think it's a really good point, Simon, that that will be something that we need to think through, and really have a kind of ongoing plan for. I think having worked in a global role for a few years now and built relationships across many different countries, normally virtually,
Mm,
I do think it's entirely possible.
mm.
You just need to work hard at it, and you need to kind of make sure you have the right mechanisms in place for that engagement to work.
Mm, definitely. Oh, so it sounds like you're in a good place to get this going. You know the challenges already, and can lead from the front, which is great. Hey, look, thank you so much for your time, Catherine. I know you're very busy. It's a big day job. That you've got two, I think, by the sounds of it. But thank you for sparing us a little time and sharing your experiences of this year. And yeah, I will obviously keep in touch. And look forward to seeing the G4S story develop as hopefully things get easier. That's the important thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
All right.
thanks very much, Simon.
Thanks for your time. Cheers, Catherine.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.